Italian young people are in Italy. Irish young people are in Ireland. We want young Africans to stay in Africa. And how are they? And it means that we have to get away from this mindset of dependence. This mindset about what can France do for us. France will do whatever it needs to do for its own sake. And when those coincide with ours, tant mieux, as the French people say. But our main responsibility as leaders, as citizens, is what we need to do to grow our own countries. What are the institutions at work that will allow us to have good governance, to have accountable governance, to make sure that the monies that are placed at the disposal of leaders are used for the interests of the state and not for those of the leaders, to have systems that allow for accountability, that allow for diversity, that allow for people to be able to express themselves and contribute to fashioning the public will and the public interest. Our concern should be with what do we need to do in this 21st century to move Africa away from being cap in hand and begging for aid, for charity, for handouts. The African continent, when you look at its resources, should be giving monies to other places. We have huge wealth on this continent. Now our own country of Ghana. And we need to have a mindset that says we can do it. These are strongly held beliefs. And that is the reason why I've adopted as the slogan of my presidency, of my period of the Supreme Office of Ghana, that we want to build a Ghana beyond aid. A Ghana which is independent, which is self-sufficient, that is capable of standing on its own feet and building its own life. We can do it if we have the correct mindset to do so.
I hear a lot about the need to change our narrative and tell our own good story. Ladies and gentlemen, as the saying goes, nothing succeeds like success. If we work at it, if we stop being beggars and spend Africa's monies inside the continent, Africa would not need to ask for respect from anyone. We would get the respect we deserve. Over 30 years ago, one of America's most prestigious Ivy League universities offered a course in Mandarin, which for years had virtually no takers. Today, there is standing room only. And it is not because the course is any easier. It is because the position of China has changed. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, China was nowhere near where it is today. China does not ask for anyone for respect now. She does not need it. Let us make our continent the prosperous and joyful place it should be, and the respect would follow. I thank you for your attention.
The swift intervention of the two institutions, following the recent reported case of excess rice production in the Upper East region, speaks of governors' readiness to act properly to assist farmers. I'm happy to note that through the coordination of the activities of stakeholders, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture has put in place measures to avert losses to farmers and processors. I must hasten to add that the success of government's efforts at ensuring self-sufficiency in rice production depend largely on the level of consumption of local rice. We must eat what we grow to motivate our farmers and support the development of the local food industry. Indeed, Rebecca, my beautiful wife, our First Lady, insists that we eat local rice at home and has made sure of this. I call on all Ghanaians to follow my example and eat local rice.
Right. So you heard the president in 2017, standing right next to France President Emmanuel Macron and saying all the right things and getting hailed all across the globe for being the example of what is sought after on the African continent and the world at large. A Ghana beyond aid. The criticism was that it was one of the usual sloganeering that our politicians have become so used to. You don't know whether they are jinxed to just do that and go to bed. Well, after some talk and criticism of the policy or the pronouncement, there was a committee set up to flesh out something so that there can be some blueprints that we can look at on the Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. Eventually, something was done. The Ghana Beyond Aid Charter and Strategy documents in April 2019. So what are we doing that is tied to or can be said to be an implementation of that beautiful policy? Google it and begin to see what a Ghana we will have if we were implementing that policy. And then, remember me asking Mr. Yaya Dupoku when he was in the studio, and the time they were on their knees, they were crying because rice, there was excess, it was getting rotten, and all of that, and no buyers. The president at Christmas made a commitment that he and his wife are going to consume locally produced rice. All of us should do the same. What is the government doing? What is its role to ensure that local rice producers, local poultry farmers, local textile manufacturers, local beverage, guys like, Blue Skies, have the environment that is necessary to be able to succeed? Who are those importing 99% of the chicken? And what exactly are we doing to the local industry that cannot produce 1% of what is being imported? Can the Nigerian example be a good one to follow? Yes, Mr. Dupoku.
Interesting.
What needs to be done by whom?
Interesting. This is a collective effort, not only from government, but from the private sector, and then from the public sector too. Unfortunately, there's a discordant voice in there. We cannot gel together. So it looks as if everyone do what they want to do. And because of that, we cannot even see the results properly. We were here when the banking sector collapsed. And government took our money, over 16 billion, and invested it in the banking sector. And we are saying that now the bank...
What? You said over what?
Over 16 billion, that's what I heard. Maybe more than that, but...
We have spent over 25 billion
there you
Ghana
go.
cedis.
There you go.
We have spent close to 4 to 5 billion US dollars
to
rescue, to solve the banking crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are the IMF. We're looking for 3.
And what happened? The banks are only into bonds and instruments. The banks are not helping the local industry to pick up. This is what is happening, but we invested money in there. We have been over the years telling government that the policies are wrong. We have been telling government. If they are listening government, whether it's MPP, NDC, whichever comes, they will look down there on the street and then they will find the solutions. This is what they are not doing. And it is quite frustrating. The whole point is that private sector can go in there. They look for profit. But the government creates an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. And in doing so, you create employment and you create wealth. This is not something that is being done in this Ghana today. So you see a lot of discordant situation in here. Now, why am I saying this? If we could put in 45 billion for the banks to go and buy bonds and instruments from the government, why can't the government also say, let me do a Marshall Plan in, say, agriculture? Because we are interlinked. We are actually interlinked. If you talk about poultry, poultry does not start from the poultry mill. It starts from the farmer, the one growing maize and soya. That is where it starts from. And then the poultry delivery will be felt by all. If you talk about rice, it starts from the farmer yet again. Even in the rice sector, 3-4 years back when I came here, I told you we can still not store. And it is still happening, we cannot store. But fortunately, there is an angel investor who has come into the fore. And because of that, we hope that next year we'll see a different story coming here to tell. Now, what I am thinking is that government and the BOG should sit down with the stakeholders in the country. We are looking at employing over 200,000, 250,000 youth into the economy. They will also be paying taxes. But then before you can start this, you need to invest. This is where we are found wanting. So you go and you talk and you talk and you talk, and nothing comes out of it. It's a piecemeal effect. And once it's a piecemeal effect, you will not get to where you want to go. This is what is happening currently. So I hope this platform you've created for us, maybe somehow, somewhere, those in authority are listening.
You know Humphrey Ayim-Dake, he was speaking to the Africa Report, and he's quoted as saying, he serves on the GIDEC board, that's the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development entity. And he's also president of the Association of Ghana Industries. And he said, he was talking about early successes, that are interlocked with interventions in agriculture. And he said many of which are quite brilliant. He says they were helping farmers to create cooperatives, giving them subsidized fertilizer, creating demand for produce from feeding the schemes into schools, opening a commodity exchange, and then layering on off-takers, such as food processing factories in the 1D, 1F scheme. We have a 1D, 1F scheme that we are told has created 160 companies so far, and we don't know what exactly they should be doing at this time. But the reporter quite clearly saw something. It says, however, in 2019, the government introduced a policy to get more revenue from ports that flooded the market with cheap agricultural products. So, policy inconsistency is the killer of the entrepreneurial spirit, says Ayim-Dake. Throw open your doors to the international market and you will kill infant industries. Would you say this is what is happening to your industry?
Yes, I think he's right, because the poultry industry is suffering same. I indicated that if you go to the Western world, poultry is not cheap. So how is it that they are able to ship it, pay duty on it, and still the prices goes down beyond what we are producing here?
Mr. Ponje, if you can't produce, then we have to allow the imports, those who have the big pockets and can import these things into the country for us.
It's
because
not
you can't
like,
meet our demand, not
yes,
even 1%.
Yeah, it's not like we can't produce, but we are not competitive to the imported one. We know that those from the Western world, one, they are giving subsidy. And I will say categorically that it's not a fresh chicken that they are bringing into the country. It has been stored for years. So it's given to the importers at any price. And it is an unfair trade that we are experiencing here. And I think we need to tackle that. Because if you are given a fair level ground, I think we can produce here. But that is not what is happening.
What will it take for you to get to 5% of the production?
Well, I think we need policy drive. In the first place, the technocrats should understand our situation, and we need to synergize to work on it. Poultry is all about the feed. So, imagine in 2020, we were buying 50 kilo weight of maize at 65 cedis. As we speak now, it's over 200 Ghana cedis with the same kilogram, 50 kilo weight. Soya beans, which was 150, is now 600 Ghana cedis. And wheat bran was waste. And we introduced...
So you're talking about feed?
The feed. So if you are not... And if you don't get the feed at a reasonable price, that is why the government came out with a project called Planting for Food and Jobs. And we all thought it was going to help us. Yes, the yield went out, farmers got higher yield, but we still allowed people from the neighboring countries to buy the maize and export them. So we were the sufferers. Meanwhile, government has injected money to subsidize what they are doing. So we thought it was going to be controlled so that the prices will come down. Now from 65 cedis, it's over 200 cedis. So how do you produce with it? A ton of feed was 1,500 cedis. As we speak now, it's 6,700. That is why the farms are folding up.
So what's the motivation? And you see the wrong to be done by the people, even though I have followed some stories that suggest there are clear, push factors that your agriculture, you are getting some sort of subsidy on fertilizer for planting for food and jobs. Then you make the produce and then you sell it to your neighbor, your neighboring country. So you are saying here there's no effective, checks and control.
Exactly.
But those who also engage in that, they have an excuse. They will tell you how you are not competitive locally, so they can give their produce to you. They won't break even if they gave it to you.
Samson, we will never be competitive enough. If you look at the way we go about agriculture, we will not be competitive. For example, if you go to other areas, I will use rice. Whereas we are producing 4 to 5 tons per hectare, others are doing 8 to 10 tons on the same hectarage. So immediately it tells you that something is wrong with our output. And this needs the intervention, which will have to come from the leadership. And this is not happening. They are getting the 8 to 10 tons because they have modernized their farming practice. Something a peasant farmer out there cannot do. So you need the leadership to bring this in. We are not doing that. And all this entails funding, cash. And that cash should come from the government end. And the government will reap all this investment if they follow strictly the laid down rules. They will get back the money plus.
Okay, now I bring Gideon. This is where you come in, Gideon Abuaji, Chief Operating Officer of Dragon Group of Companies. I mean, you properly represent the feed sort of subsector. I'm hearing all these stories, and one question keeps coming to mind. But there is the 1D, 1F program. Why are you guys not buying into that so that you can access the funds from the banks at a cheaper interest rates to also, make good business.
Yeah, it's true. It's a complex situation. Agricultural products, mostly the cereals and the grains, are slightly cheaper during the harvesting season. And that means that you will need to do bigger aggregation, which means that you need to buy more and store them in warehouses. That is one of the ways to stop our foreign compatriots or our neighboring compatriots from taking what we produce in this country to their countries. In the process of doing that, you need a lot of capital. And this capital is going to be locked in cereals and grains. In that process, you will also need a collateral manager, because if you ask all the, let's say, the feed milling companies in this country to buy, let's say, the whole year stock and store, they wouldn't have that resources to do that.
Is it really about the resources? You see, the question that comes up, and I was referring to a recent JoyNews documentary done by Fifi Kwete, where the beans that you are looking to buy, the locals, on the back of planting for food and jobs, are making a good harvest. But even the roads to use to transport the goods to the market, they don't have the roads. So people from neighboring countries are getting closer to them and buying them. If they are able to make it through the tortuous journey to the market center, you give them a bad price, so they won't sell to you, the state of Ghana, who supported them.
Samson, this issue, I think, is being skewed on different fronts. There isn't any processor in this country that goes straight to the farmer to purchase. It's never done. We go through aggregation, and the aggregation has different levels. You have the guy who uses aboboya to go to the various villages to buy 1 bag, 2 bags, 3 bags, and store it in his house. Then you have maybe a bigger aggregator station at Gushegu, who will then go to this guy who uses aboboya to go to the interior villages to get the small bags. He will go with maybe a small Kia truck and aggregate to Gushegu. Gushegu then will look for the bigger aggregator who is dealing with maybe the bigger feed millers, and then load the whole truck and then get the products to the feed miller or the soya processor. So there is different levels of aggregation. It's the same aggregators that these foreign guys are also using. And what may happen is that maybe we've had situations where we've aggregated products to a point, and an Indian person comes in, offers 5 cedis more, and our monies were returned to us. So it's a very complex thing. And most of us were thinking that with the effort that we put in establishing the commodity exchange, would have helped to serve as an intermediary between the farmers and also the processors or the producers. The reason why I'm saying that is that no processor, like I said earlier on, will be able to aggregate all the volumes that they need at a point without having a very good source of financing. However, if you go in that you are going to take a loan, which currently will cost you about 32-33%, and you stock the products in your warehouse, it means that every month you are likely to pay something. And most of the loans that are done in this country are breached. It doesn't really give you that space to be able to get things going. And it's not only the raw material that the processors are looking at as a cost point to their production.
So the genuine problems that you mentioned, you must have, gone over them. You must have brainstormed. You would not have been at your wit's end, you and your colleagues within the industry. What are the checks that ought to be in place? What ought to be done that is not being done? That's why you can aggregate, buy from, individual smallholder farmers, and then eventually, when it's almost getting to you, some Indian comes and gives 5 cedis extra, and they take it from your hands. What can be done about that?
What can be done about that is that we should let the Ghana Commodity Exchange work, because both ends agreed that there must be an intermediary that the banks are comfortable with to work with, and then all the regulatory statements and regulatory systems that needs to be put in place to make sure the banks has the comfort. Because if we are using the commodity exchange, you have what we call a collateral manager. So whatever products that is sitting in any of the warehouses, they take charge. The farmer agrees to sell at a certain price. The buyer agrees to buy at that price. He pays the money to the bank. If he doesn't have the money directly, he can speak with the bank, which is prepared to do that on his behalf. He goes in for the product. He already has a contract with the off-taker, which is maybe the poultry farmer or the feed miller. Then he processes the products. It goes straight to the feed miller or the poultry farmer. He takes his receipts to the bank. He gets the balance on his money, and the whole cycle starts again.
Do you think that, for example, the growers, the locals, the farmer groups, all of them, do you think that they are working with a certain national consciousness?
Samson, that's a very complex question. I can say for sure that there are some that are working with national consciousness, but we all know that profiteering is also a good business. And so if there are no regulations or there are no policies to regulate some of these things, you have people who will want to take advantage of some of these things. And then we as Ghanaians or we as processors ends up to be the biggest losers.
In what you do, do you have a sense that you are working to a certain policy, bigger policy for the general good?
Yes, we do.
And which policy will that be?
The policy is to, one, regulate the importation of cereals and grains in this country. Two, a policy to regulate how these products are sold within the country. And third, a policy to make sure our local industries are fed with the raw materials that they require to keep production going and feed those finished products back into the poultry industry or any industry that their processed products are supposed to go, so that collectively we are able to either take part of the import bill and assimilate it locally and help build the capacity so that with time we become self-sufficient in those sectors. That helps everybody.
Let me briefly continue here with Mr. Yedupoku and Victor Pong Eje, and I'll come to you, Doc, and also Tony and Mr. Abraham Kumsin. When you are in your rice business, when you are in your poultry business, you and your members, Is there something at the center of the nation that you are working to, or you are in your business, you are doing your business?
Okay. I think we first consider the nation, one, by creating jobs, because we've been saying that along the value chain of the poultry industry, we can create 1 million jobs. And that has been our vision, to create jobs. And two, to give quality and fresh chicken to the citizenry. So health-wise, I think it would be good if Ghanaians begin to eat the local chicken, because it's fresh, tasty, and very healthy. But unfortunately, we are not able to produce as we wish, because our raw materials, which are maize and soya, prices continues to go up day in, day out. And we have nothing, we can't do anything about it. Sometimes people will say that, why don't you go and produce your own maize? That is not possible, because we have our predecessors like Darko Farms and others who started maize farming in Edra. They have all the resources to produce the maize, but it was not successful. So we allow division of labor to work. We are producing the chicken. Somebody should produce the maize and soya for us as our raw material. So if you don't get it at a reasonable price, it becomes very difficult for us. For example, we've begun increasing egg prices because of the situation of the inputs. That the ton of feed, which was 1,500, now you are buying it at 6,700.
There's demand for your product in the first place, correct?
Yes, I think egg, we have been advocating that everybody should eat an egg a day, which of course we know is very nutritious.
So there's demand, but you can't meet the demand.
It's not like we can't meet the demand. We are still producing, because for eggs, for example, it's not coming from anywhere. We produce it in the country.
There was a time, and I've told this story a few times on this show, because it really gets me to at a loss as to appreciating how the political leadership can behave. Very reckless. That some of your farmers who were supplying for the school children suddenly, lost their markets, so that some importer was going to bring something else, a mackerel, to replace it. They call it a school feeding mackerel.
Mackerel, yeah.
They said they were bringing for, is it China somewhere? I don't know.
Yeah, it's from China.
From China.
Yes.
So that you lost your market where there was a ready market within the schools.
Exactly.
Where the policy was that in every locality where these schools are, the caterers must, use buy the local produce,
yes,
for the meals that they prepare. And one of it is to have at least one egg. So, look, whilst that might be a problem, do you think that the solution then will be to put a certain limit to importation and then give a certain focus to empowering the locals to produce?
I think so, especially the chicken. I gave you the quantities that are coming every year, 683,000. When you translate it into live bears, it's 570 million bears. You can imagine the jobs that these bears can create in this country. But we have lost all these jobs because of somebody bringing this chicken from outside. Now, we can restructure the whole thing. I don't think we can produce all the 570 million at a time. But at least, if we consider 20% of the total imports, that this year we are reducing the total imports by between 20 to 40%. And the local industry should produce and replace it I think it will be a way out, and we will increase it by even 10% every year. We give ourselves 5 to 10 years, and we'll be self-sufficient in poultry. If we don't start it, we've been talking and talking, proposals upon proposals to ministries, to parliamentary select committee, to economic management team, and nothing is coming out. So I think we need to start somewhere. At least there should be a coordination between the ministry and the association. We sit down and have a discussion. I think that we can have a way out, because we can start with vertical integration project, where we have commercial farmers producing the maize and soya solely for the poultry industry at a reasonable price. Then we have the hatcheries also producing, because now as we speak, we are importing most of our day-old chicks from outside. So all our hatcheries too, they are collapsing. Our feed millers. Then we come to those who will be raising the birds, the poultry farmers. And with that, I think we can have a headway. So if, for example, we are producing 20% of the 570 million birds, it will come to about 114 million. Let me say on record that Morocco, our African, the same African country, is producing 9 million broilers every week. Every week. And we are not producing even 1% of the total imports. So what I would say is that I think we should synergize with the ministry, the technocrats. They should meet us and understand our situation.
What is the missing link? What is the misunderstanding? Why do we continue to give licenses to importers and they are growing, and we understand these are people who have very deep pockets, who are going to import, instead of keeping, a reasonable focus on the local production? Why is that so? Why are we interested
I would say that the poultry industry is not giving attention. And maybe they don't have a real understanding of the industry, because an industry that can create 1 million jobs.
Who doesn't have a real understanding?
Yes.
We know, the president and his ministers know that our economy is what it is today because we do not produce. We are not eating. There is no, what do you call it, income substitution. That's what is our bane. That's why on the back of going to IMF, the president addresses the country and speaks about why we need to refocus on what we used to laugh at with, what is his name, Dan Latte, which was the real thing, domestication.
Yeah.
Yes, so rice producers. What is it that encourages so much importation as against local production? What ought to be done?
Simple. Samson, rice was not part of our traditional diet. It is something that we have acquired. And rice came at the bottom and is now rubbing shoulders with maize and actually taking over from maize. This is the situation we find ourselves in. Looking at the positive side of it, everywhere in the country that you grow rice, it will come once there's water. So it means that if we put ourselves into work passionately, we will be able to produce the rice that we eat here and even export.
Why are we giving so much room to importation rather than local production?
It's the Trasaco syndrome.
What does that mean?
The Trasaco syndrome is simple. You sit somewhere in the ministry as a leader or a politician, and you give import license, or you allow import to come in. Within 2 months, 3 months, you've gotten dollar to buy land at Trasaco and build, and you can get your V8. But if you want to go through this channel of going to the farmer end, all the way build it up to this end, you won't get Trasaco land to buy. This is the Trasaco syndrome that Ghana is experiencing. And this is why we are where we are, because they know exactly what we need to do. They are not willing to do it because they can't buy land at Trasa.
I was mentioning off air to you about this Nigerian, anchor program, and it seems to be doing quite a good job for them. Anchor Borrowers Program, they call it ABP, and they have a whole guidelines, a document of about 30 pages guiding both farmers and all who want to do it. And the objective is to create economic linkages between smallholder farmers and processors with a view to increasing agricultural output and ensuring food price stability. And so specifically, they are looking to increase, bank financing to improve agricultural productivity by creating an ecosystem that drives value chain financing, reduce the nation's food import bill through import substitution, and enhance domestic value addition. That's the way to get the CD being respected, not any artificial means to, as it were, hold it up, prop it up. Create new generation of farmers through innovating financing to support smart agriculture and deepen financial inclusion and grow smallholder farmers from subsistence to commercial farming. And there are things I saw, as the product that really, really shocked me. So if you are dealing in cereals, rice, maize, wheat, cotton, roots and tubers, as cassava, potato, yam, all of that, sugarcane, tree crops, legumes, tomato, livestock, fish, poultry, any commodity that may, be decided by those who are behind the policy. And if you have to participate, you really don't need that much. You don't need that much. And they are going to offer you the loan, and then they have a certain interest rate that they are using. Then they have a repayment plan, which can include that you use the produce to pay, for the loan that you have taken. If you are the collaterals that they require, joint and cross guarantee of members, that is, you need to be in a commodity association or cooperative, to be able to participate. And all you need for yourself as a criteria is that you are a member of a farmer group, you have a bank account, you provide a valid bank verification number. I'm sure here they will say TIN or now our ID. You should be seen not to have been a defaulting borrower. You have a validated farm. Then you provide 10% minimum equity contribution. And you are not supposed to participate under multiple associations in the cropping season. That's all you need to do, and you are in. What do you know about this project?
I am intimately in the know about this project because the one who initiated it happened to be my chairman, and I work under him. He is the one who guides me. But the initiator of this project is our own old man, J.A.K. Kufuor. He was the one who appointed his deputy local government minister to go to Nigeria with Jack Foundation. When they went there, they met with huge resistance, more than what we experienced here. They were frustrated, but then they got a listening ear, a sympathetic ear. That was the governor of CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria. I think it was Sanusi then. So they just bump into each other, and he decided to listen to what the Ghanaian is saying. That is Honorable Juma Odum. And so he poured his heart out to Sanusi as the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. I said, do you think this can be done?
Juma Odum was minister in Kufuor's regime.
Yeah, he was a deputy minister.
Deputy minister.
And Kufuor co-opted him to go to Nigeria.
Okay.
And he got involved with Sanusi, who was then the governor of the Central Bank. And that man threw a challenge to Mr. Odum that, do you think it can be done? I said, yes. So he said, okay, put government aside. CBN will partner you to do this. So Odum started gathering all over the country intelligence, going to the governors and talking to them. And the result is what we see today. So the initiative started by Odum in Nigeria was anchored by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And what they did was that quietly they galvanized the farmers together, and over the years made the farmers grow and grow and grow. Then when they realized that the time has come, they brought it to the notice of the president, that is Buhari, and then he closed the borders against importation of certain commodities, rice being one of it. And so immediately there was a huge demand for local rice.
He closed the borders, you are saying there was a ban. He
closed the borders. He banned the importation of rice and sugar and others. And then immediately they started looking inward for what was available. And so within 3 months, all rice, even a kilo of rice could not be gotten. This is why we found the Nigerians in the country, in Ghana here, looking for paddy rice to take in, because that is allowed. They don't allow made rice, but paddy rice is allowed. So the experiment Odum did worked well because it was in consonance with the government. And the presidency came in after the Bank of Nigeria has taken it over. This is what we have been advocating, that we cannot do it alone. It is not possible. But if we have a strong hand behind us, because you need to invest, and that investment means you have to set aside money. That money that we put in the banking sector, if we have just 1/4 of it, this situation will change, and we'll put over 250,000 people to work. And it's a possibility. Not only rice, not only poultry, including soya and the rest. This is what we are failing to do. And so I coin it the Trasaco Valley Syndrome.
In 2021, June, July, the Nigeria's, rice imports in metric tons was 957.
Yeah.
As we speak, as we understood, in 2022, June to July, they were doing only 15.
Simple. You see, Samson, immediately the business folks realized that there is money to be made in this commodity, they went in. You have giants like Adenuga, you have Dangotes, all of them building huge factories and also giving credit to farmers to do it. And so this is why they have cut down the rice import. It's a very simple thing. Here, we are fortunate now, just about this month.
That's what we are showing you on the screen.
The product of Honorable Juma Odum.
They were doing to just do a launch.
A Ghanaian. Yes, and Buhari is so proud of it. And we can
He's getting a lot of praise for it.
We can do this within next year, or give or take 2 years, we can do this. Fortunately, we have gotten an angel investor in the rice sector now.
I'll be frank with you. When I saw this footage, I didn't believe it. I thought it was fake.
It is real.
I thought it was fake.
It is
until
real.
I checked and realized that this was real.
It is real. And this is not enough to feed them for 6 months. So they are expanding. And the idea is that they will expand into West Africa. It is up to us to take advantage of it. But when you have...
So for our radio audience, the footage we are showing, bags of rice, they're doing a certain display in they call it Gombe rice. So this is the Gombe. It's supposed to be a district or something called like that. And it's like your Accra Sports Stadium or even more.
Yes.
And they have done pyramids of piling of the rice. Very tall, and it's covering a huge spans of land, just to do the ceremony.
Yes, Samson, because there was a linkage between the policy makers and those on the ground, and so the result is what we are seeing.
Yeah, I read about how there was some consultation with the farmers, with everybody leading up to the policy that they drew up. And as I told you earlier, from 957 metric tons in 2021, January to July, they are now doing only 15 tons.
Yes.
That's crazy.
15,000 tons.
15,000 tons, as against the 957,000 tons.
This is just about 1 year. You can create this. It doesn't take 10 years to create what you are seeing, because the rice cycle maximum is 150 days.
And from what you see, they can sustain this.
They are.
So it will be there'll be a regular cycle of producing this much.
Because you see money, you want to be involved. This is not for social. It is making money, creating wealth. So you get people buying into it. That's why you see the Dangotes and you see the Donigas. Why would they go into it? They are doing oil, but they see oil in rice. So they are doing, and this is only the milled rice. The additional value added are not even yet tapped. So that is what we have been preaching about. Dangote is building silos across the nation to store the rice that is coming in. And after this, he's tackling poultry, where you have Olusegun Obasanjo. And so you see, the leaders have sat down to think that why should we take...
But when they are tackling with bans, it is because they know that when we ban, we can get locals to produce. But when we ban, for example, your local poultry industry, you're not doing 1%. So when we ban it, how are we going to
They don't have... You see, we call ourselves that maize we have reached a sustainable level. Where is the soya to back it? Now, 99% of the soya produced in the country is exported. And soya is a critical ingredient.
So you stop that exportation?
Yes. No, they haven't stopped it.
I mean, if you have to make this kind of success, you stop the exportation.
No, don't stop the exportation. You encourage the farmers to produce soy. And then you encourage private sectors to come in and build the factories that will process the soy. I was one of the pioneers in the soy industry.
Okay.
I collapsed. I owed the banks. I ran away. And so I cannot...
You've been everywhere. The clothing industry, where we are told
I started
15 million different...
it.
You were there.
I was doing over $3 million a month in used clothing. I started it. I was one of those who built the Kantabantu market. But I decided to go because I wanted to do local industry.
Okay.
And the frustration, I wish I can go back. Because that is what Ghana prefers.
But tell me you won't go back.
No, I'm not going back.
There may be problems. I hear about some local rice being expensive, but I have a preference. I don't know what people say about that.
Because
that I'll prefer that expensive local rice to buying the same amount for foreign rice or even cheaper versions.
Thank you, sir.
But it must be such that everybody can afford.
That's why I'm telling you that now we have an angel investor in the rice sector. So next year, you will see a different story altogether. I solicited, pleaded, begged on my knees, and I got the Jospon Group involvement. This man did not only come in, he went to Thailand to understudy, he himself, to understudy why Ghana cannot produce rice. And then, just this month, he has brought in 33 experts from Thailand on his own ticket to live in Ghana for the next 1 year. He wants them to do a full cycle for us to understand where the gaps are. That's the angel investor we have been praying.
I now understand what you meant by angel investor. Okay, so I need to...
If I may come in. You were talking of us producing just for ourselves, so we cannot produce. I can assure you that we can produce the chicken here. But we need to put some structures in place.
Right.
For example, if you are producing chicken, you need a day-old chick. Now the hatcheries in Ghana, they are all collapsed because they are not having this thing to produce. If they produce, they cannot even sell the best. The challenge is that competing with the imported chicken is very difficult. I said we are producing 1% because if you look at how poultry has impacted the American economy, poultry is mostly about the broiler production. The broiler production. If you look at the impact on America, broiler alone contributed 75% of the total impact. The layer was just 6%. So, because of the cheap products that have been imported into the country, and because we cannot compete in terms of pricing, it has pushed all the poultry farmers to produce eggs. Yeah. So if we put the structures in place.
But when you say that, and that is a matter of a fact, that 80% of poultry ventures in Ghana have folded up due to the importation of frozen chicken, then it means your industry is dead.
It's not only due to the high cost of feed. I was telling you that a ton of feed, which was 1,500, is now 6,700 Ghana cedis. So the farmer will use it, produce the eggs, he sells the eggs, it cannot even pay for the feed. So you realize that the farmer is piling up debts upon debts. And in the end, he will just sell the birds and refuse to go in for day-old chicks. Day-old chicks, that was 5 cedis. I tell you today, it's 25 cedis per a day-old chick. So we need to put some measures in place to regulate whatever we are doing so that it will give us a comfort to also produce.
All right. I'll take a break here, and then when I return, I'm going to Mr. Abraham Kumsin. I will speak to Tony Senaya, Hosman Shoes, and then Dr. Priscilla Chumesi Bafo will also assist us. She's listening and making notes of these difficulties, and she will help us to unravel what it takes at the bigger level, at the state level, because you can appreciate that this is what is required. And I was asking them why they are not all signing up to one district, one factory. We have had stories of some of those who are in there, and a lot has to be done to make sure that those are sustainable, because as it is now, some of the stories from some of them doesn't look good. They seem to be piling debts rather than in a trajectory to grow. Be right back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and my guests are Yao Edupoku, Chairman, Competitive African Rice Platform, Ghana chapter under the ECOWAS Rice Observatory, Abuja, ECOWAS Secretariat. Victor Oponeje is National Chairman, Ghana National Association of Poultry Farmers. The two of them are here in the studio. Tony Senaya is CEO, Hosman Shoes. Gideon Abuaje, Chief Operating Officer, you heard him a while ago, of Dragon Group of Companies and Agribusiness Expert. Alistair, of course, I almost forgot about Alistair Jimate, who is Public Affairs Manager, Blue Skies Products Ghana. Abraham Kumsin is Secretary General, Ghana Federation of Labor. He took us to a research by Professor Peter Korte that blames the obvious cheap import of textiles for the decline in local textiles, which are also now more expensive relatively. He spoke about now boasting of only less than 1,000 workers in the industry from what used to be 25,000 workers in the textile sector in the 70s. And of course, we have Dr. Priscilla Chumesi Bafo, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Ghana. And she has always been passionate about industrializing the economy in a way that will provide jobs, which is a national security threat, bound to happen, explode if it is not taken care of. We'll be right back.